Welcome to part 2, drawing the outline of my video drawing lesson series. I'm using an H pencil and 15 by 22 inch watercolor paper. I am going to use a grid to draw this girl, and the first step after drawing the grid is to draw the outline of the girl. So I'm just going to follow the outline all the way around her and in her dress there, and that allows me to know where I should place the eyes, her features like her nose, her doll, her hand, and we're going to use that grid. So I have a grid on my picture and a grid on my page, and I'm just going to start in D1 here, and I'm going to look at both the positive and the negative space. So positive space is that area where she is in that square in D2, all right? And I'm going to look at that shape of her head. But I'm also going to look at the negative space, the area outside of her head, the background. And I'm going to look at that shape as well in the grid. So by looking at both of those, I can determine where she is in D1, D1 here and D1 there. And I use little points to kind of guide me. So I draw a dot where her head kind of intersects the grid, and then I'll draw my line. Now it looks like I made a little mistake here. I always keep a nice white vinyl eraser handy. And I'll just erase that and correct it. And now I can compare the two, the negative space and the positive space, and see if I've got both those shapes in D2. Looks like I've kind of made a mistake here. Let's erase it again. And I'm going to put that a little bit more accurately, comparing how far down it comes on one side and how far down it comes on the other. And I'll put that line in. That's a little bit better. So I'm going to do exactly the same one for C1. And compare that line there and put that in. So C1 and C1. Then I'm going to look at C2 here, and I'm going to compare that. I'm going to put a kind of dot, her head kind of bends there, and a dot on that line, and then I'm just going to draw that line right across. I like small little areas that are easy to, small little shapes are easy to see, like in C3. And then I'm going to look at B3. And we can speed this up. You can see what I'm doing. So now I'm just comparing where things enter and exit the grid. And when it comes to a new shape, like the doll's head, I'm going to treat the same thing. Think of the doll's head as a positive space, and now the girl becomes a bit of a negative space area where she is not. And I'm going to compare the doll back of her head and the braid here. I'm just going to compare what shapes are made in the squares, like A7 there. And I'm going to go back over to the top here and draw the rest of her head. And just always comparing that shape. The other thing I do is that I try not to be kind of sketchy with my pencil line. I try to draw the whole pencil line within the shape where the grid. So here I'm just drawing the bottom of her elbow and her arm. And there you are. We have our outline. And so now I can use that outline to place things inside of it. And I know where she belongs and where she doesn't belong. And I can look at, okay, this is where her hair goes. And I can kind of say everything now belongs in that area. So that's my first step in the drawing, is to draw the outline. Watch for part 3, drawing the obvious, where I'm going to take a look at the obvious shapes within her and draw those first.